Hello and welcome to the very last video on the repaint of the E-flite Beechcraft D18, converting this into a US Navy SNB-2 stationed in Hawaii in the summer of 1943. So as you can see, the project is done, it's wrapped up, got all the painting done, the detailing, the weathering, everything is the way I intended it to look when I set out on this project, and I'm really pretty happy overall with the success on how this one came out. I did have a lot more videos planned for the series. In fact, you see there's probably been a pretty big lull in activity from the last video until the completion video. And unfortunately, there was a few individuals who were pretty offended by me repainting an airplane and doing some scale detailing to it. And unfortunately, they made that very aware, both on my YouTube page and a number of other social media sites, that they were very upset about my decision to repaint an airplane. And that really took a lot of kind of motivation out of the project, kind of took the wind out of my sails a bit with working on it. And unfortunately, I did not complete as many of the videos as I had hoped to really kind of illustrate how to do the entire project. So you know, if these videos aren't your thing, that's totally cool. Just you don't have to watch. You don't have to leave any comments. That's perfectly fine. But for those of you who do enjoy it, I really do appreciate all your support that I received, telling me to keep going with not only the project but also with the videos. So with that said, yeah, there's a little bit of a lull in activity from the time I completed painting the fuselage to the time you see it here today. So a couple things to note here, a couple things that I tried that may not have worked as well, and a couple other things that came up along the way. I had used that clear contact paper to create a mask. I had seen that done on a few other planes and it worked remarkably well, but I noticed that on the curved surfaces like the nose and the engine nacelles there's so many surfaces all kind of coming together that trying to take a flat piece of clear contact paper, cutting out the mask and sticking to it didn't work nearly as well as I had hoped. In fact, I felt like I couldn't get it have just enough adhesive so that it stuck to the surface without having too much, or when I pulled it away it actually damaged the paint underneath of it. So I kind of gave up on doing that if you're going to have surfaces that are very complex in terms of curvature, and I went back to my original method of just using the tracing paper with a little bit of masking tape rolled up behind it, and that gave me that nice feathered edge between the colors. And when I did that, it actually was much happier with how it turned out. Second thing that I thought was interesting on this repaint that I have not experienced before, the dark blue you see on the top surfaces here, it cracked really bad after I painted it, and I don't really have a good explanation why, other than it may be temperature related, or it may be well, it's most likely something to do with temperature, I think, because it didn't do the same cracking that appeared on the foam doesn't appear on the plastics, and it was all painted at the same time. And I used two different spray cans to do the painting, and both spray cans exhibited the exact same behavior. So when I painted the upper fuselage, we were going through some pretty wild temperature swings, and I have a feeling that it may have just been too cold in the garage when I applied the blue paint, and it created kind of a cracking look, and it kind of it didn't really come out the way I had hoped. However, turning that into a positive, it actually probably looks closer to what the aircraft would look like if it sat out in the baking sun in Hawaii during the war. So while it didn't come out as perfect show quality that I wanted, it's probably closer to reality in the fact that the cracks and stuff and the fading in the paint, allowing the base silver to kind of show through, kind of replicates a little bit of what would happen out in the field, where the paint would begin to fade and kind of break down a little bit from sitting out on the tarmac in the blazing sun. So speaking of that, because it is dark blue and foam, something to be aware of is that whenever you paint one of these aircraft any dark colors, it becomes more susceptible to what we call popcorning, which is the kind of bubbling up of the foam, because of the dark color, either the dark blues or even blacks, especially blacks, they absorb so much more heat that you'll actually get kind of a popcorn look. So if you go ahead and you paint your aircraft, and it doesn't have to be the D18, it can be anything. I had this happen on my Corsair as well. If you're going to use the dark navy blue paint or black, just be very aware that your time you have in the sun exposed is going to have to be very limited. So one thing you could do is just bring some towels with you and just drape stuff over the top of it, keep it the aircraft in the shade. Just try to keep it out of as much direct sunlight as you can. Sometimes it only takes a few minutes for the surface to popcorn over. I learned that the hard way with one of my Corsairs. It literally was only out in the sun for maybe 30 minutes to 30, maybe even 45 minutes, and the surface had popcorn really bad. And that was using this Tamiya dark blue paint. So I want to keep my D18 looking much better, so I decided that we're going to make sure we kind of avoid really hot days of parking it outside. So most of the time I fly is in the evening, so the sun has gone down a little bit lower and it's not nearly as warm. And of course, living in Michigan, it rarely gets that warm anyway. But as a word of caution for those of you who are looking to use this paint scheme on your D18, that you're going to want to make sure you limit your sun exposure far more than you would if you had it just silver. So, all right, let's just do a quick project overview. So, like I said, this is painted up as a US Navy SNB-2. This was primarily used as a navigation trainer, as a reconnaissance aircraft. It was based in Hawaii during 1943, summer of 43 actually. And the reason why I kind of make that known is because you see the national insignias here on the fuselage and the wings have that red outline around them, and that really only existed for a short time in 43 before the order came out around, I think, September time frame to paint blue over that red, and the red disappeared from active duty. So this kind of replicates the aircraft as it looked during that time period. The model or the aircraft that I modeled this after is flown by the Commemorative Air Force and is based in Kokomo, Indiana. It is painted exactly like this, except for it's got the blue outlined national insignias instead of the red. I went with the red just to kind of give it more color, and I also think that the red looks really good with this paint scheme. So otherwise, it's duplicated as close as I could to that particular aircraft, which I saw pictures. I took pictures of it at Oshkosh and saw it there. So I went through, I detailed the cockpit as well. So it's got two US Navy crew members in there, pilot and co-pilot. If you watch the other videos, you can see I went through, detailed everything, created a fairly detailed cockpit out of foam and balsa, as well as the pilot and co-pilot in there. And then I sealed up the entire canopy, and it really does bring a lot of life to the aircraft by having the accurately painted crew members and a little bit more detailed cockpit on there. Originally, I had intended to add the pitot tubes down below on the fuselage. I actually have them 3D printed, but decided in the end to hold off on those, just because I have a feeling they'll probably get bumped pretty easily. And also, I plan to hang the aircraft from the ceiling, and right where the strap goes to hang the aircraft is right where the pitot tube goes. So if you notice, there's no pitot tubes up front, even though I originally said I was going to do that. Moving back a little bit, we have the engines that I painted in detail. That was going to go with 3D printed kind of scale RC engines, and I decided due to cost that I would just paint what was originally there. And I'm actually pretty happy with how they came out. They're not the most detailed dummy radials that I've ever seen, but I tell you what, with a little bit of paint work and some weathering, you can really get them to look pretty good. Same with the props. Originally, I was going to do 3D printed props that are a little bit more scale, but after some more thinking on that particular subject, I decided that I would just paint the factory props closer to what they would have looked like on the actual aircraft. Even though they're not the scale shape, I don't have to make any, I don't have any concerns about the strength and durability of the factory props versus a 3D printed prop. So also went through, painted the exhaust stacks. They are silver on the factory plane, as everything else is silver. So I painted them with a couple different layers of dark brown, burnt iron, rust, and then I weathered them with pastels, and then added a little bit of exhaust staining underneath. As for the landing gear, you see that they're different as well. I cut off the factory plastic strut covers and installed a pair of 3D printed ones that Tom Hunt did the design work on, and I thank him for that file, because it really brings a lot more realism to the landing gear. You have the scissor joint in there as well. I also changed out the tires because nothing wrong with the factory tires, but I just wanted something that looked a little bit more scale correct for the Navy version of this aircraft. So I went with some Dubro low bounce rubber tires on here instead of the factory ones. Since I had the landing gear all apart, I decided to go ahead and install those. Moving back even further, you can see I have new printed windows here from Cali Graphics. She did all the graphics on the aircraft, and instead of trying to mask off the windows back here, I decided just to go ahead and have her print me new black vinyl, and I laid those in and they fit perfect. The door is something that I forgot to get a decal made of, so I used some real thin black pinstripe and actually made a door and used part of an extra grab handle off the Cirrus SR22 to make a handle that you use to get in the door. The ADF antenna, after some discussion, I decided to go with flat black. There's been a few that were black, some that appeared to be painted fuselage color, but I decided in the end the majority that I saw were more flat black than fuselage color, so I painted that. I also had in high hopes of actually running some fuselage or wires inside the fuselage here, including a rotating beacon here on the tail, as well as a anti-collision light on the back. But trying to run the wires through, I was having trouble getting them to draw through properly. But I did already pop the hole in here, so I actually just put the clear lens back here for the rotating beacon and just painted it transparent red with some Tamiya paint. Otherwise, no other changes really to the tail other than to say that I now have the aircraft properly trimmed. When I first flew the aircraft, I did not trim it properly and had a lot of issues in the air, and I found out that I had the elevator completely in the wrong spot. So I fixed that, so it should fly much better now that that has been aligned. So if you have a D18, make sure you pay close attention to the alignment of the elevator here. There's a little tool that yours should come with, and you can actually slide that tool in underneath and make sure that the elevator is trimmed properly before your flight. Before the aircraft goes up again, definitely want to recheck the center of gravity. Anytime you repaint an aircraft, you add scale details, you do anything to it, you're going to want to recheck the center of gravity as well. So what I ended up doing is I took my Dubro CG machine and I put some longer rods in it so I could extend the CG machine out far enough to make sure that I could reach the panel gap here between the inner and outer wing panels, and I can set the center of gravity according to the manual. Since I fly mine on a 3S battery versus a 4S, I did have to add some weight to the nose, which doesn't really surprise me considering that for two reasons. One, I'm flying a lighter weight battery, and second of all, with all this mass that sits behind the center of gravity that's been painted, that you'll end up actually adding some additional weight to the aircraft, and you can affect the center of gravity and the balance that way. So make sure that after you finish up the repaint, you always do a recheck of your balance before going out to fly. So like I said, I had to add some weight to the nose. Pretty much came in at almost exactly the same weight difference between what the factory recommends for a 3S battery and a 4S battery. So that actually worked out pretty well. I use that as my starting point, is what's the battery weight delta, put that weight up on the nose, balanced it, and then just adjusted it from there, and I came in pretty close. So really happy with how that balanced. The aircraft should fly considerably better than the first flight, which of course the center of gravity was off and the elevator was off as well. So my aircraft did not come new out of the box. It is a used aircraft that I had picked up, and I made the wrong assumption that it would have been ready to go right outside the box and I didn't have to do anything to it, and I really should have taken the time to properly set the aircraft up, which is something I always preach that you should do, and then I did not do it myself, and it led to a very interesting first flight. But now that the elevator is set, the balance is set, the aircraft should fly far better. Speaking of the D18 and flying it, if you guys want to try out this aircraft before buying it, the latest version of RealFlight, the Evolution version that is out now, there's quarterly updates that are available that you can purchase, individual aircraft or an entire pack of aircraft, and the Beechcraft D18 is in the expansion pack. and you can buy that aircraft for real flight and fly it yourself. And I have to say that if this one flies as well as the one does in the simulator, then I'm going to be absolutely in love with the aircraft, because it is very locked in and it's a very great flying aircraft. I know mine will be much better than I flew it last winter when I first gave it the maiden, because I've already gone through and made some pretty serious changes, such as the elevator and the balance. So that pretty much wraps up the D18 project. Like I said, I'm really happy with how the aircraft turned out, even though that the blue paint did something kind of funny to me on the foam that I've not experienced before. It's not, it doesn't look too bad. It looks more like faded blue paint, which would be pretty accurate for an airplane sitting out in the tarmac in Hawaii. So I love how this scheme looks on the aircraft. When I saw it flying at Oshkosh, I knew right away, I says, that is the scheme that I want. And I was able to translate that scheme to the aircraft pretty successfully, and really happy with how it turns out. It should look really great in the air. Like I said, my Corsair and Hellcat are already painted this color, and they look awesome in the air. So I can only imagine this too will fit in very well. And there are so many different schemes available for the Beechcraft D18. You know, it's a very popular aircraft both in the military schemes as well as civilian. So pretty much anything you can dream up, you can find an existing one online, or you can make one up yourself. And I'm sure you can get a hold of Cali Graphics, and she can make whatever type of graphics you need for the aircraft. So if you guys got any questions on something I didn't cover in the video series, like I said, there's a lot that's missing, unfortunately, but I'm more than happy to help out. If anyone has any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to respond and help out. And if you are offended by me painting foam airplanes, well, then you don't have to leave any message. I'd prefer if you didn't bother leaving any comments behind at all and spent your time somewhere else. So, because it really is demoralizing to have to respond to angry people online who are really upset that I put paint on a foam airplane, and how dare I do that. But like I said, thanks for all those that were supportive during that time period and encouraged me to continue with the project, as well as to finish up the video series. So like I said, if you guys got any questions that are not negative, please leave them in your comments below. I'm more than happy to help out.